All right, fam. This is my first time actually going live on Builders of the Ark. So bear with me. So I do have a message that y'all saw. It's called Guardian or Trespasser. Which one are you? And the importance behind this messaging, let me see if I can straighten up my camera a little bit because it seems to be, there we go, a little bit better. All right, up, moving all the way up. Try to get it situated, guys, because this is the part that kind of I had it set up a certain way, and we moved some things around. Up, it's going back up. All right, my. All right, let's see. Bam. Is that it? Okay, better. All right. So, as I discussed before, we are now doing a time period where everything is kind of getting out of whack, and we're gonna start seeing a lot more things perspire or the word to start happening. Things are gonna start happening, and it's gonna be a little intense for some of us, especially with money. We had to learn how to budget better. But as we get into these trying times, we still have to maintain our dignity, maintain our integrity, and be able to walk upright before Yah, right? And so we can't allow ourselves to get distracted. We can't allow ourselves to get thrown off whack with looking into all types of matters of things, and then allowing it to cause us to get off track. So we had to make sure that as we go forth in this time period that we are training our children right, and then that we are actually trying to spread the gospel, not spread it in the manner that we want to spread it in, as far as trying to tell people about the rapture, or trying to tell people about all these other different things outside of the fact that one day everybody is going to bow before Yahushua Mashiach, and we're going to have to admit that He is the King of Kings. And so, my question to you today is: are you a guardian of His covenant, or are you a trespasser of His covenant? Of His covenant, and we could look into that. What is exactly what exactly is a guardian? All right. Um, a guard basically is somebody that watches over in order to protect or control an area, right? And then a trespasser is someone that enters property that is not theirs, or someone that goes against a rule that was made. So when you hear Yahuwah say that they have trespassed against me, it's saying that they have sinned against me, right? And so we have to keep that in mind. And so the quickest way to look into this is going back to the beginning, Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. All right, we're gonna go to Genesis chapter 2. And forgive me, guys, my other screen is set up over here. So if you see me looking at it, this is really why I prefer to have like other software, so that way you don't see me looking away from the screen. But so let's start from Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 through 17. And Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to guard it. All right. So what is he guarding? Let's look at this, right? So he's guarding the garden. All right. This is Yahuwah's garden that he planted. All right. So let's look what other instructions that was given to him. And Yahuwah Elohim commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat. Right? Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, for in that day that you eat thereof you shall surely die. So pretty much when they ate of that tree, they trespassed because they committed a sin, because they broke the covenant, right? And so that's why you hear me a lot talking about guardians of the covenant, because we are to guard His covenant. We are to guard and keep His commandments, okay? And if we doing it any other way, right? Trying to say that we can live one way and live another, then no, that's trespassing against him, and you're not fulfilling your part of the covenant, right? Now let's look at something else, because in the book of Jubilees, it gives you a clear description of what happened there, right? So when you go to the book of Jubilees and you read book of Jubilees chapter 3, let's go there. Book of Jubilees chapter 3, and we're going to start from verse 16. Okay, now let's look at this and let's pay close attention. And in the first week of the first Jubilee, Adam and his woman were in the Garden of Eden for 7 years, tilling and guarding it. And we gave him work, and we instructed him to do everything that is suitable for tillage. And he tilled the garden and was naked and knew it not and was not ashamed. And he protected the garden from the birds and the beasts and cattle, and gathered its fruit and ate, and put aside the remnant for himself, right? And for his woman, and put aside that which was being kept. And after the completion of 7 years, which he had completed, there 7 years exactly, and in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, the serpent came and approached the woman, and the serpent said to the woman, has Elohim commanded you, saying, ye shall not eat of the tree of the garden? Now, we just read exactly what it said in Genesis, that Yah told them about the tree of knowledge, right? And so again, now the serpent has stepped out of his place, because he was supposed to be the one watching over the Garden of Eden. Now we're gonna come back to Jubilees, but let's jump over into Ezekiel chapter 12, Ezekiel chapter 12, verse 18, because Ezekiel chapter 12, verse 18 gives us a description of what Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12. Now look at this. And the prince that is among them shall bear his. Oh, I went to the wrong one. Sorry. 28 and 12. All right. Son of Adam, take up a lamentation upon the king of Sor, and say unto him, thus says Adonai Yahuwah, you seal up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You have been in Eden, the garden of Elohim. Now we know that he's given a lamentation to the king of Tyre, right? But this is a description of who Hasatan was and what he was supposed to be. And so he was supposed to be a cherub that was in the garden, that was supposed to be keeping a watch over the. So in other words, Yah had placed earthly guardians, and then he's placed spiritual guardians. And he trespassed because he wasn't supposed to interfere with man. He wasn't supposed to interfere with anything they were doing, but he got out of place because y'all should be the one sending communication to them, not him doing it on his own accord. Y'all never told him to go and communicate with them about the tree, but he decided to be cunning and deceiving. Now let's continue to read this. He said, you have been in the Eden, the garden of Elohim. Precious stone was your covering, the sardius, topaz, and diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of your tabrets and of your pipes was prepared in you, and the day that you were created. You are the anointing cherub that covered, set you so. You were upon the holy mountain of Elohim. You had walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. You were perfect in your ways from the day that you were created till iniquity was found in you. By the multitude of your merchandise, they have filled the midst of you with violence, and you have trespassed, right? And some translations say sin, but here is basically describing a trespass. So you have trespassed. Therefore, I will cast you out as profane out of the mountain of Elohim, and will destroy you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Now, if you go back to Genesis chapter 3, going to verse, let's see, up here at the top, Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which Yahuwah Elohim had made, and he said unto the woman, Yea, has Elohim said, Ye shall not eat thereof of the tree of the garden. Now we see that the serpent, right? He's being cunning because now he has stepped out of his place, right? He has supposed to been just watching and keeping guard from a heavenly perspective, and yet he now steps down into the realm where Yah has placed the humans. He's supposed to be watching the garden from a spiritual aspect, and then he's supposed to be watching, which is Adam, is supposed to be watching the guard from the earthly aspect. Which, remember, he said that he was to protect the beast, protected from the beast, protected from the cattle, protected from whatever. You know what I mean? So nobody was to do allowed to do more than what was in there. And basically, with the man, he was not to eat of the tree. But did he guard or did he trespass? So we continue to read, right? Let's go back to Jubilees, and we're gonna keep tying Jubilees and Genesis together, okay? So now remember, we read that the serpent just asked her in Jubilees, right? Did Yahoo say that you shall not eat of the tree of the garden? And she said to it, of all the fruit of the trees of the garden, Elohim has said unto us, eat but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden of Elohim. Has he said unto us, Ye shall not eat thereof, neither shall ye touch it, lest you die. Now, the touch part never even came out of his mouth. He said, Don't eat of it, right? So she began to talk a little bit more to the serpent than what she should have. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for Elohim knows that on the day ye shall eat thereof, your eyes will be open, and you will be as Elohim, and you will know good and evil. And the woman saw the tree, that it was agreeable and pleasant to the eye, and that its fruit was good for food, and she took thereof and ate. Now, we sometimes get so focused with looking and paying attention with our eyes that we allow things to cause us to stray or get off of the path. And so this is what we have to be careful with, because he used seduction against her. And if we allow ourselves to be seduced or tempted in manners that cause us to constantly stray outside of Yah's perimeters, then guess what? We put ourselves in a vulnerable position, because we causing ourselves to trespass. In other words, step in territory that is not permitted. And so therefore, when we step in that territory that is not permitted, that Yah never gave us instruction to step into, that becomes a problem. And that's what happened with Hasatan. And that's why he was kicked out of the mountain. And so now his goal is, if he can get you to break your guard, right? If he could get you to break your guard as he did Adam and Eve, he can get you to be removed from your proper place, just as he was removed from his proper place. Just as every watcher that came down and committed sin with the women, when they slept with women and left their first estate, they trespassed against Yah. And so therefore they're removed from where they were originally supposed to be. And remember, we are ordained to be kings and priests of Yah. Once we given our life to Yah, surrendered ourselves to Yah, then that means that we should no longer be walking and transgression against him. And so therefore, if we're not trespassing, that means that we have been authorized, right, to go into certain territory. Like when the children of Yasharel was going into the promised land, they was authorized to go in there. But what were they not permitted to do? They were not permitted to go against Moab. They were not permitted to go against Ammon or any Edom, any of those territories that had already been given as an inheritance to their cousins or their other distant relatives, right, that was surrounding them. They were not permitted to go into their land or even to make war with them. But what happened with Moab? They began to commit sexual immoralities with them. And this is where Phineas rose up, because the men were sleeping with the women. He caught one of the men going into his tent with a woman in front, after Moses had just gave them an instruction not to do it, and he went in and he speared them both through while they were in the act of fornication. He spared them both through. And Yah made a covenant with him, a covenant of peace, because he brought peace back to the congregation after he did that, because there was a plague hitting each and every tribe in that congregation. And so, brothers and sisters, we have to make up our mind. We have to make up a choice. Are we gonna guard his commandments? Remember what Yahusha said. Yahusha said, if you love me, you will guard my commandments. What are we guarding when we guard his commandments? We're guarding our hearts, and we're guarding our minds from thinking and acting like the world. So his commandments keeps us on that path. But when we stray, when we go against and we walk and other manners into different properties, we trespass against him. When we decide to obey the laws of man and not the laws of Yah, we trespass and we step on property that we shouldn't be on. Now remember, the earth is his and the fullness thereof. But Yah himself has prohibited us to go into certain territories, and he has forbidden us not to go into certain territories. So same way with the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. Do we continue to guard that which is precious, or do we violate? Do we violate and go after that which is not for us? So, brothers and sisters, this was a short little message. It was the first time I went live on this channel. I plan on doing it a little bit more. But I want to say, if you haven't made that choice to fully guard and keep his commandment, you need to make that choice now, because days are getting darker and the times will get harder. And if you're not able to stand, if you're not able to overcome the temptation that's going to overtake this earth, if you're not able to stand on your own when adversity and persecution come, then the only thing that's going to happen to you is that you're going to walk away with your head bowed down, just like the rich young ruler that claimed that he kept all the commandments. He claimed that he kept all the commandments, but when Yahusha said, I want you to sacrifice everything that you have and give it away, he couldn't do it because he was still bound to property that was no longer his. When Yahusha told him to give that stuff away, that was a commandment, and he chose to keep it, right? And so we have to keep that in mind. Some things Yah is going to tell us to get rid of, and some things he gonna tell us that we shouldn't even come in contact with. So, brothers and sisters, in closing, surrender your life to Yahushua Mashiach. If you haven't, I just ask that you do it today. It's so important. And just realize that if you're not guarding his commandment, you're trespassing against him. Choose which one that you are. All right, brothers and sisters, always remember to look up, for your redemption draws nigh. I love you. Yahuwah loves you. Always remember to say, thank you, Yahusha. Blessings. I'll talk to y'all soon. Shalom.